Hey everyone, welcome back to Literate Lens. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're diving into a book that literally changed how millions of people think about life, success, and happiness. We're talking about Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a... And trust me, this isn't your typical self-help book that tells you to think positive and manifest your dreams. This one's different. This one's real. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Before we start though, if you love learning powerful lessons from books without spending hours reading them, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We break down life-changing books every week here at Literate Lens, so you don't want to miss out. All right, so let's begin with something Mark Manson wants you to understand right from the start. You know how we're constantly told to care about everything? Care about your career, care about your body, care about what people think of you, care about your Instagram likes, care about being positive all the time. It's exhausting, right? Well, here's the thing that Mark realized, and it's going to sound controversial, but stay with me. Not everything deserves your energy. Imagine you're walking through life with a bag of fucks to give. That's right, a literal bag. And every time something happens, every time someone says something, every time you face a problem, you reach into that bag and give a fuck. But here's the problem. That bag isn't unlimited. You only have so many fucks to give in your life. So when you're giving fucks about everything, about the traffic that made you late, about that person who didn't like your post, about having the perfect life that looks good on social media, you're wasting them. You're literally running out of fucks for the things that actually matter. And this is where most of us are stuck. We're giving our precious energy to things that don't deserve it. Mark tells this story about how our culture has become obsessed with being extraordinary. We scroll through social media and see everyone living their best life, traveling to exotic places, looking perfect, seeming happy all the time, and we feel like crap because we're just ordinary. We're sitting in our room, dealing with regular problems, living regular lives. But here's the truth bomb Mark drops on us. Most of life is ordinary, and that's okay. In fact, and this might sting a little, but you're probably not going to be extraordinary, and neither am I. And that's not depressing. That's actually liberating. Because when you accept that you're not going to be a billionaire, you're not going to be famous, you're not going to change the world in some massive way, you can finally focus on being extraordinary at the things that truly matter to you. Like being an amazing friend, or building a skill you love, or creating a happy home. Small, meaningful things. Now, Mark shares something from his own life that really hit me. He talks about how in his 20s, he was a mess. He was partying too much, drinking too much, sleeping around, basically just trying to avoid any real responsibility or pain. And he thought he was living the dream, you know? No commitments, just fun. But deep down, he was miserable because he wasn't giving a fuck about anything that mattered. He was running away from meaning. And that's when he realized something profound. The question isn't, how do we stop giving a fuck? The question is, what do we give a fuck about? Because we're going to care about something, we're designed to care. So we better choose carefully. Let me tell you about the feedback loop from hell. You know this feeling. I know you do. You're anxious about something, maybe an exam or a presentation. Then you start feeling anxious about being anxious. Like, why am I so anxious? I shouldn't be this anxious. What's wrong with me? And now you're anxious about your anxiety about your anxiety. It's a loop, a terrible, exhausting loop. Or maybe you feel sad, and then you feel bad about feeling sad because you see everyone else being happy on social media, so now you're sad about being sad. Mark says this is one of the biggest traps of our generation. We feel bad about feeling bad. We feel guilty about not being happy all the time. But here's what he wants you to know. Negative emotions aren't bad. They're not something to run away from. They're actually information. They're telling you something important. Pain is part of life. Suffering is part of life. And the people who try to avoid it, who try to be positive all the time, who run away from difficult emotions, they're actually making things worse. Because growth comes from struggle. Happiness comes from solving problems, not avoiding them. Mark tells this powerful story about a guy who went to Japan to study Buddhism. The guy's sitting there with the monk and he asks, "How do I let go of all my problems and just be happy?" And the monk looks at him and says something like, "Everyone has problems. That's what life is, one problem after another. The question is not how to avoid problems. The question is, what problems do you want to have?" Mind blown, right? Because when you think about it, every good thing in life comes with problems. Want a great relationship? Cool, but you're going to have to deal with compromise, communication issues, and vulnerability. Want a successful career? Awesome, but you're going to have to deal with stress, long hours, and setbacks. Want to be fit? Great, but you're going to have to deal with discipline, sore muscles, and saying no to pizza sometimes. So the question isn't how do we eliminate problems? The question is, what pain do you want in your life? What are you willing to struggle for? Now here's where Mark gets really real with us. He talks about something called the do something principle. We've all been there, sitting around waiting for motivation. I'll start working out when I feel motivated. I'll start that project when I feel inspired. I'll start studying when I'm in the mood. But here's the truth. Action isn't just the result of motivation. Action creates motivation. You don't wait to feel like doing something. You just do something small, anything, and then the motivation comes. It's like you don't feel like cleaning your room, but you pick up one shirt. Then you figure, might as well pick up these socks too. Then you're like, okay, let me just make the bed. And suddenly, you're cleaning the whole room and you feel motivated to keep going. The action came first, the feeling came after. Mark also talks about responsibility in a way that's different from what we usually hear. He says, and this is important, you're not responsible for everything that happens to you. Bad things happen, unfair things happen, things that aren't your fault. But, and here's the hard part, you are responsible for how you respond to everything that happens to you. Someone treats you badly? Not your fault. But it's your responsibility to decide how you react, whether you let it destroy you or teach you. You fail at something? That sucks, and maybe circumstances were against you, but it's your responsibility to choose whether you give up or try again differently. This is hard to accept because it means we can't just play the victim forever. It means we have to take ownership of our lives even when life isn't fair. Let me tell you about values. Mark says most of us are chasing the wrong values. We're chasing pleasure, material success, being right all the time, staying positive constantly. These are what he calls bad values because they're outside our control and they're empty. You get that promotion, feel good for a week, then you need the next thing. You buy those shoes, feel good for a day, then you need more shoes. It's never enough. But good values? Those are things like honesty, creativity, humility, standing up for what you believe in, even when it's hard. These values are in your control and they create real fulfillment. They're not about feeling good all the time. They're about being someone you're proud to be. Mark shares this story about Hiro Onoda, a Japanese soldier who kept fighting World War II for 29 years after it ended because he didn't know the war was over. 29 years in the jungle, alone, fighting a war that everyone else had moved on from. And Mark asks, what wars are you still fighting that are already over? What beliefs are you holding on to that aren't serving you anymore? What version of yourself are you trying to be that doesn't fit who you actually are? Sometimes we need to surrender. We need to let go of who we thought we should be and embrace who we actually are. And here's something about relationships that Mark talks about that really resonates. He says, healthy relationships have boundaries, not walls, but boundaries. Because love isn't about accepting everything about someone unconditionally. That's codependency. Real love is about saying, I love you, but I'm not going to accept being treated badly. I love you, but I have my own life and identity. I love you, but I'm going to call you out when you're wrong because I respect you enough to be honest.
Trust is built in small moments. It's built when someone says they'll call, and they do. When they say they'll show up, and they show up. When they say they'll change something, and they actually change it. Trust isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistency in the little things. Now, Mark talks about death. And I know, heavy topic, but stay with me because this is important. He says we're all gonna die. You, me, everyone watching this video. One day, we'll be gone. And that sounds depressing, but actually, it's the most liberating thing ever. Because when you really accept that your time here is limited, you stop wasting it on bullshit. You stop caring about impressing people who don't matter. You stop putting off the things you actually want to do. There's this thing called the denial of death, where we try to create immortality projects, building companies with our name on them, trying to be famous, leaving a legacy. And there's nothing wrong with ambition, but if you're doing it because you're terrified of being forgotten, you're missing the point. Because you will be forgotten. We all will, eventually, and that's okay. What matters is that you lived a life that meant something to you. Mark tells this beautiful thing about his friend who died young. And he says that death is the only thing that gives life meaning. Because if we had unlimited time, nothing would matter. We could always do it later. We could always say sorry later. We could always start living later. But we don't have unlimited time. So every moment actually counts. Every choice matters. Every relationship is precious because it's temporary. And here's what he wants you to take away from all of this. Stop trying to be happy all the time. Stop trying to avoid pain. Stop trying to be extraordinary. Stop giving a fuck about everything. Instead, figure out what you actually care about. What values do you want to live by? What problems are you willing to solve? What pain are you willing to endure? And then give all your fucks to that. Because the truth is, life is hard. It's supposed to be hard. You're gonna fail. You're gonna get hurt. You're gonna feel lost sometimes. But that's not the problem. That's just life. The problem is when you waste your limited fucks on things that don't matter, and then you have nothing left for the things that do. So, choose carefully. Choose what you care about. Choose your struggles. Choose your values. And then commit to them fully, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's where real happiness comes from. Not from avoiding problems, but from solving the right problems. Not from feeling good all the time, but from living a life that means something to you. All right, everyone, that's the subtle art of not giving a fuck. I hope this summary gave you some powerful insights and maybe even changed how you think about your life a little bit. Mark Manson wrote a book that doesn't sugarcoat reality, and sometimes that's exactly what we need to hear. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what book you want me to cover next. And seriously, if you haven't already, subscribe to Literate Lens. We're building a community of people who want to grow, learn, and get powerful lessons from the best books out there. New summaries every week that could genuinely change your life. Remember, you only have so many fucks to give. Make them count. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.